Hey there, everyone. Thank you for joining us again for another 10-minute topic here in Eyesight Studio. Basically, today, Clayton's going to demonstrate how to verify bench conformance, using cut and fill maps. This is going to be using some actual site data, and as before, your questions are welcome. So, looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say. I hope you enjoy it. And without further ado, Clayton, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Burton. All right, guys. Well, go ahead and get Studio opened up. Thanks again for jumping online this morning to check this out. So like Burton was saying, we're going to be running through some site data to get a really nice visual for showing where a bench is and isn't conforming to design. So today we're just working with a flat bench for an open pit mine. And we just want to know where the big extreme cut and fills are before we achieve design elevation. So we're going to actually go ahead and start with a surface at this point. So obviously we've already registered the scan data and created a topo surface. All right. So here's what the surface looks like, and it actually looks pretty good. You've got the dig face over here. Obviously, there's a pattern that hasn't been shot yet, but really what we're focusing on is this flat area out front. And it does look pretty flat, but that being said, there's obviously going to be some areas where we're a little bit high and a little bit low, and we're going to show a really, really cool way of reporting on that. So basically what we want to do is we want to color the areas that are outside of a certain tolerance. And to do that, I'm going to use this color distance from objects tool. But before we even get into that, we need to give it an object that we want to create that from, or that we want to color it from. So I'm going to create a horizontal plane. So since I've got this surface selected already, it's going to make the plane as big as that selection. So all I need to do down here in this lower left-hand corner, I just need to give it the design elevation. So in this case, this bench is supposed to be at the 2900 elevation. So we'll go ahead and create that. One of the things I like about this is that it actually puts what elevation you assigned the plane in the label, so you don't forget what you're working with here. So I've got my plane, and this is where everything should be. So that's on the 2900 elevation. So I'm going to be using that as kind of my guide. So what I'm going to do, and keep in mind we are coloring an object, so I want to make sure that I've got my new surface selected. We're going to color distance from objects. This is where, so for my base object, I'm going to grab that plane that we created, and I'm going to put that in here. And then I've already preset, what I like to do is I have a ½ a foot of tolerance either direction, and I make that white. And then the areas where we're high, I have it kind of on a yellow to red scheme. And then the areas where we're low, where the fill areas, are on a dark blue scheme. So I do have these set at kind of a +2 to -2. One thing I want to show you real quick, if I were to calculate a range, obviously it's going to include that dig face. It's going to autofill these values with the highest and lowest point. And what I really like to do is I've got a saved legend. So every time I do this, everybody gets used to the same colors meaning the same thing. So I'm going to go ahead and create that. And then we'll just hide that plane really quickly. And I'll grab that legend and I'm going to put it in the view next to it. And the cool trick when you're trying to look at two windows like this, if you go under a window and you hit tile, it'll automatically expand those two to fill up the entire screen. So now what we've got is actually quite a bit more useful information. You can see the areas where, the bench, it looked pretty good, but now we can really see the spots where we're high and we're low. And this is helpful for a lot of reasons. Specifically if I see a big red area with orange surrounding it like this right here, that's pretty high. And then these really dark blue spots, if it hits dark blue, we're over 1.5 feet low. So if this was a final bench or an area where we thought we might put a stockpile later on, we could get equipment in here and actually just utilize the areas that are above design to kind of backfill the areas that are below it and not have to bring outside material in. So this is a really cool visual for showing that. Now the second step to this, or I guess another option to do for this, and we'll jump into this right now, would be is if you want to actually get cut and fill numbers on this. So this is going to be a little bit different, but this is a pretty cool process. So I'm really excited to get to show you guys this. So what I'm going to do first off is I'm going to create a grid. So let's see here. I go under create. There we go. There's my grid. So I'm going to create a 100-foot grid. So it's going to put a point on the surface in a 100-foot square grid. We'll go ahead and create that now. In fact, I will increase the pixel size so everybody can kind of see what's going on there. So all those green points are 100 foot in each direction from the next closest one, but they're actually directly on this surface. And that's going to be important because I'm actually going to rerun that color distance from object tool. But before I do that, kind of a trick I've learned, we're going to actually delete out the points on the grid that are over on that dig face, because those values are going to be really high, obviously, because we haven't dug out the material that we want to. So I'm going to delete those out, just get those out of there. All right. So now I created these grid points on the surface, and I'm going to rerun the color distance from object tool, coloring the points from the plane, which, again, coloring the points, kind of pointless. Here's where it becomes useful. I'm going to output these distances to a file. And I'll go ahead, come in here, and I'm going to output them to this file that I've named webinar. So we'll go ahead and drop it in there. Distances in feet, that's perfect. That's what the site's using that we're working with here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. This is the part where we're actually going to jump out of Studio really quick, but it's very simple and it just uses Excel, and I'll show you exactly what I'm going to do. So I am going to grab this text file that it created for me. I'm going to convert it to a CSV, and it's going to give me a big warning, basically telling me that it may become unusable. I've done this before. It doesn't become unusable. We're totally fine. What it gives us is it gives us a breakdown. So it's each one of these rows represents one of those points. So it's my XYZ coordinate as well as the distance. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete that stuff from the top. Here's the part that makes it easy to read when we bring this back into Studio. I am going to format these cells. What I don't want to show up on my screen is a cut and fill with 6 points behind the decimal. That's pretty useless. So I'm just going to make sure we're only keeping 1 decimal point. Go ahead and save it. Yes, we want to save it. Good to go. Okay, back into Studio. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to grab this pit. We'll hide everything except that. We'll change the color. And then now I'm going to bring those points in. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my import menu, and then we're going to import that CSV that we just created using a custom import format. So if I select that and I hit open, and then I get all kinds of options, a bunch of old ones that I've got saved. But we come down here to custom. This is where having the points or those distances only have 1 point behind the decimal becomes useful. So I'm actually going to bring these in as survey points. And let's just do a quick query to make sure. Okay. So this is my easting. This is my northing. Obviously my Z, and then I'm going to make these the point label. So these distances are no longer going to be considered a value. They're actually going to be, Studio is going to look at them as if they're just a label, which is going to become useful because I'm going to actually drop them on top of this surface. So we're going to bring those in, and those, since I brought them in as survey points, those are going to come in under my survey tab over here on the left-hand side. So if I grab these, actually we'll jump right back into here. Oop. Let's give that one more shot. All right, throw the pit in there. Perfect. Grab those point distances, throw those on top. Oop, and it looks like I missed one of them that was just off to the side right there. Oh well. But since I made the distance a label, now when I bring those survey points on top, that's what it's going to be showing. And I can then turn around, grab that surface, go ahead and rerun that coloring that we had on it. No need to create a legend this time. So now not only do we have the coloring shown there, but we can also then change that surface color to anything we need to make it easier to visualize. But we've got a map with a 100-foot grid of cut and fills. You can save this out, show it to any of the operators, show it to the pit foreman, and you're going to get a really comprehensive report, a lot better coverage, and a lot more information than you would get just having a surveyor go out and throw a few cut and fill stakes out in the middle of the bench. So this is a pretty quick, pretty easy way to convey a lot of information in terms of where you're close to achieving design and where you're not. Now for this little kind of mini session here, I went ahead and just used a flat bench, but since we're coloring a distance from an object, keep in mind it doesn't have to be a plane. It can be any design object that's in Surface. So if you've got a ramp and that's supposed to be at a an 8% grade or something like that, we can bring that in, color distance from object, and you can use this for dump designs, ramp designs, tailings, ponds, anything like that. So anywhere where you want to know how far away you are and you need a great visual to represent that, this would definitely be the tool to use. So with that being said, that's pretty much what I wanted to show you guys today. Appreciate everybody checking it out. I'm going to go ahead and see if Burton's got any questions that you guys have written in for us. And if you do have some of those, you can go ahead and write those in now, and we will try to get as many of them as we can answered.
We do have one, actually. So how many custom ranges can you input for your tolerance? How many legends?
Okay, how many legends? So let's go ahead and bring that tool back up here real quick. So in terms of how many legends I can have over here, I can save as many of them as I want. You can see it creates a new one every time I run it. So if I give it a new name, it'll save it. In terms of how many actual different little color values I can have, if I expand this over, all of a sudden everything gets really, really, really wide. I can add in as many as I want. So I can hit new and I can add in a bunch of these. So if you want to get some really specific tolerances, you can go ahead and do that, and then you can just change these colors to whatever you want to represent. I like whiting out my tolerance and then having a blue and a red scheme for the above and below. And if you get this all screwed up, this is where getting a saved legend is really helpful. Just grab that, drag it over here, and it'll reset it to your preset legend. So if you get a preset legend that you really like, and everybody on site gets really used to associating a certain color with a certain distance, you can save that out, and then you don't have to recreate it from scratch every time.
And we actually did get one more question. So can you export that image with a legend to a PDF? And it's funny because we are actually going to cover that in our next 10-minute topic. Creating and exporting 3D PDFs, high-resolution screenshots, fly-through animations. So really anywhere where it's beneficial to visually demonstrate any site-specific data that you want to show. So we are going to cover that. It's a little bit longer than the time we've got today, but that is our next 10-minute topic. So if that's something that's interesting for you, definitely tune into that, and we'll get you covered.